If you're thinking about buying a house in Austin, there are 5 things that are going to need to happen first. So in this video, I'm going to break them down and show you exactly what you're going to need to do to buy a house in the Austin metro. Now, the first thing that's going to need to happen is you're going to need to accept what's going on in the current market. You might not like it, and you might wish it was different, but if you're able to accept it, you're going to be one step closer to buying a house. Now, if you're watching my video, I know that you're probably watching other videos here on YouTube. And there's a lot of clickbait content out there about the economy, mortgage rates, inflation, and the housing market. Some of it I don't agree with, and I often wonder how some of those channels get as many views and subscribers as they do. But I will say this, I am actively involved on the front lines of the Austin real estate market, and I can often see trends happening before they show up in any kind of sales reports or news stories. I do have my own personal opinions about what we can expect in the future, but this video is not about presenting any kind of data to influence your opinion one way or another. All I'm trying to say is that if you want to buy a house, in order to get there, you must come to terms with what's going on in the current market. If you think that if you wait, you're going to get a lower interest rate or a lower price on the house, then maybe now is not the right time for you to buy a house. On the other hand, though, is if you can accept the current market, including current interest rates and current prices, if you can come to terms with that and accept it, then you can move forward to the other steps. The second thing that's going to need to happen before you can buy a house is you're going to need to secure the financing. Of course, if you have cash, you can skip this step, but the vast majority of people are going to finance at least a portion of their home purchase. This step is going to involve talking to a mortgage professional who's going to look at your income, your down payment, and your current debts, and then come up with a number about how much house you're going to be able to afford. Mortgage rates are higher than they were a year ago, which means that the same household income today will qualify for a lower dollar amount with the current rates. Now, this is tied to the previous step, which was accepting the current market, because it's not going to be possible to borrow money at last year's interest rates. If you're going to buy a house in today's market, you're going to borrow money at today's rates. So if you're good with the projected payment and the dollar amount that you qualify for is within the range of the houses in the area that you're interested in, then you'll be ready to move forward to the next step. But before we do that, let me say this. I make these videos to provide information to enable you to make better decisions when you're buying or selling real estate. But the only way I'll know if you like them or if you find them useful is if you comment on the video, like the video, or subscribe to my channel. Also, if you think about buying or selling real estate here in the Austin area, I would love to help you out. You can shoot me a text or an email or schedule a phone call on the YouTube channel page. But enough about that. Let's talk about the third thing that's going to need to happen before you can buy a house in the Austin area. Identify the areas you're interested in and find the right house. Now, this brings up one of the most unique things about purchasing real estate. There are no two houses that are exactly alike. If you were shopping for a car, you could go to Honda, Toyota, or maybe even Ford or Chevy. And once you find the model that you want to buy, let's say, for example, a Toyota Camry, besides things like trim level and color, you can buy that exact same car at any Toyota dealership in the entire United States. This is not the same thing when you're purchasing a house. Every builder, whether they're currently developing a community or they completed one 50 years ago, every one of them is only going to offer a select number of floor plans that a buyer is going to be able to choose from, which means that every neighborhood or subdivision or master plan community is going to have a lot of houses that look very similar. In fact, in some cases, you can find the exact same house on the same street or down the block. In addition to this, if we're talking about active builders, most of them will have communities across the metro, which means you can often find the exact same floor plan in the city of Austin, in Hutto, Leander, Round Rock, or even down south in Buda or Kyle. Now, it's going to cost that builder the exact same amount of money to build those houses in different communities. And yes, there will be a slight difference in the cost of the land, but the cost of that finished house can be significantly different depending upon the community it's located in. Now, this is very easy to observe in the digital world. You can go to the builder's website, look at the different communities, and compare the floor plans that they're offering. But sometimes we forget about this if we're looking in more established neighborhoods. So regardless of whether or not you're driving through a brand new community or one that was completed 50 years ago, if you drive through that neighborhood, you're going to see similarities in the design and the style of those homes, because most of them were built by the same builder who used the same designer and the same architect to come up with the building plans. In fact, if you really look, you should be able to start identifying which one of those houses have the same floor plan. Now, the exception to this are those areas of Austin where the old house is torn down and the big modern house is built on the same lot. Those are usually custom builders who only build a handful of homes in that neighborhood. But in neighborhoods like that, it's very easy to see that there's an assortment of houses from different time periods. The brand new one might be worth over $1 million, but that one right next to it that hasn't been updated since the 50s, it doesn't magically become worth $1 million. The point I'm trying to make is that even if you're looking at two houses that had the exact same floor plan, the value of those houses are going to differ depending upon their location. This can be true inside the same subdivision or even on the same street. Let's say one house was on the main street that's used to enter the subdivision, so you're going to see a lot of traffic. And the other one is on a cul-de-sac that has a green space behind it, so there are no backdoor neighbors. In other words, it's more isolated and there's much less traffic on the street. Even though they have the same floor plan, and they may look almost identical, because of the difference in their locations, they're going to have different values. Now, of course, some of this is relative. If the house was directly across the street from an elementary school, a family with school-aged children might see that as a huge plus, but maybe not so much for a retired couple who sees that elementary school and immediately starts thinking about the noise of the children playing and the congestion when the parents are picking up and dropping off their children. Now, if you look at resale homes in established communities, you've got the additional complexities of remodeling. If two houses were built in the 90s and one of them had $50,000 worth of upgrades in the kitchen and the bathroom, that seller is going to think that the remodeled house is worth more. This is probably true. But if that buyer doesn't like the color choices or the design decisions, they may not attach the same value to that remodel as the seller does. Now, these are just a couple of things that may come up during your home search. The important thing to remember is that it's a process. And eventually, you're going to find a house that's within your budget, is in an area that you want to live in, and has design features, both interior and exterior, that appeal to you. Once you find that house, the fourth thing that's going to need to happen before you can buy it is you're going to need to submit an offer that the seller accepts, and then you sign the contract. If it's a resale home, more than likely you're going to use a Texas Real Estate Commission contract. If you're purchasing new construction, that builder probably has their own contract. In very rare cases, the seller might hire an attorney to create their own contract. But no matter what contract is used, they're all going to have the same core elements. You're going to have a sales price, you're going to have a closing date, and the title company that will hold the earnest money and finalize the transaction. The other thing that's going to be included is a breakdown about who's going to be paying for what. Things like the cost of the survey, title commitment, and the HOA transfer fees could be paid by either the buyer or the seller. But the contract is going to specify who's going to pay for each of them. All of these additional costs are often grouped together and called closing costs. Now, once the buyer and the seller have agreed to all the terms and have executed the contract, which simply means they both signed it, once that happens, the only thing left is the final step, which is to close on the transaction. We live in a world where we've become accustomed to instant gratification. You could walk into a store, swipe your card, and then walk out with the merchandise that you want. Or you can go to Amazon, place an order, and the package arrives within a day or two. On a real estate transaction, though, there is going to be a delay between when you agree to the terms and close on the transaction. Now, part of this is driven by the method of payment. If you're paying cash, as soon as the title company is ready, you can wire the funds and close. For a loan, though, an appraisal will need to be done, and of course, the underwriting process will need to be completed before you're going to be able to close. This can take a couple of weeks, or it can take over a month. Back in step 2, when you talk to the mortgage professional, they should be able to give you an estimate on how fast they're going to be able to close. You would use this information in step 4 when you're submitting the offer. Now, it is possible to extend that closing date, but any changes after that contract is executed is going to require both the seller and the buyer to agree to it. In other words, if you can't close on the date in the contract and the seller won't agree to an extension, then that seller would have the ability to terminate the contract without penalty. The only reason I'm saying this is to stress the importance of having an accurate estimate on how long it's going to take for that mortgage approval. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is the option period. After the buyer and seller both agree to the terms of the contract and have executed it, you as the buyer are then going to send the earnest money to the title company. This is usually a couple of $1,000s. Now, in addition to that earnest money, you're also going to send the option fee, which is usually a couple of $100s. The legal term for this option fee is consideration. You are giving something of value, the option fee, and in exchange, you are receiving a set period of time, 5, 7, 10 days, where you will have the unrestricted right to terminate that contract for any reason whatsoever. The option period is normally when the home inspection is done, but you should also use this time to verify anything that might impact your willingness to buy that property. For example, if you had an RV or a boat and you plan to park it in the driveway, well, you'd want to make sure that you're going to be able to do that before you actually purchase the house. Another example is if you had concerns about the foundation or the roof. During the option period, you should get an expert out there in addition to the home inspector who can give you an idea of what you're looking at and an estimate on how much it would cost if you needed to do that. The home inspection is designed to give you an overview of any issues that might exist with that house. Some might be minor, but others might be more serious. You are buying that house as is, so technically you could buy it with any issues, as long as the mortgage company is still willing to loan on it, and you're willing to accept the cost of fixing or repairing those issues. What usually happens is that if something comes up during the option period, it begins the process of negotiation. And whatever that buyer and seller agree to becomes part of the contract. Now, the other thing I want to make sure I mention is that you can have an inspection done on a brand new house. Even though it's new and you will have a warranty on it, I would highly recommend that you do that. Now that you understand what you need to do before you can buy a house in the Austin Metro, this video will help you understand some of the options you have available along the Red Line Transit Rail. The Red Line stretches all the way from Leander to downtown Austin. And when you understand all the development that's taking place along the Red Line, you have a much clearer idea of some of the housing options available in the Austin area. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and ring the bell. That way you'll get a notification every time I post a new video.